Well, we've come a long way. We're now to the point where we can bring our Blender game character into Unity. To do that, all we really need is just that Blender scene file right here, that blend file. I can take this file and just click and drag it right into the Assets window of Unity, and it'll think a bit, and there it is. So what it's done is actually opened up Blender in the background, used Blender's own FBX converter to convert the file to FBX, and copied it here into the Assets folder in our Unity project folder. So now we need to work on the import settings. So I'm going to click on this file right here, and you can see over here in the inspector we get a lot of information that we can adjust for importing our character. Now we've got information over here for the model, for the rig, and for animations. I think for the model and the rig, I'm going to go ahead and leave it at the defaults. If this character were more standard, in other words, if it were in a T-pose, I might try and change to the humanoid setting here instead of generic. And try and set it up so that the Mechanim animation system in Unity could control it better and we'd have more options. But frankly, I don't think it's going to work, so I'm not going to use that. So let's go over here to the animations part of the inspector, and here's where we're going to define the individual clips that we created. We created an idle, a run, and a jump pose. And we're going to define those here. Now you can see Blender's already got some generic or default clips from 0 to 109 because that's the range it found keyframes in. So it's already kind of created those. We're going to change or delete these, but I wanted to show you down here, if you click on this little arrow, you get kind of what's inside this object, and if you scroll down here, look at this. You've got action and default take. And over here you've got action and default take. This right here, these are the animation clips that we'll be using when we want to trigger the animations on and off. So we need to modify or create new animation clips that match our character and have them appear down here. So let's take a look at this first default take. Let's make this idle. I'm just going to click here and change the name and call this idle. And the frame range that we found back in Blender was frame 2 to 13. And, oh no, that's the run, excuse me. We want, because you can see he's changed to the run. Let's do the idle first. Let's go 23 to 81. Let's do that. There, now he's in that idle pose. And this is a looping animation, so I'll go ahead and say loop time and turn on loop pose here. And then I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to click apply. Oh, it looks like I put 13 instead of 23. I'm sorry. Let me do that. 23 and hit apply. And now we can hit play here and we can see him going through his idle animation. There he goes. Okay, so we know that that's going to work. That's good. And you can see over here that this animation clip has been changed from default take to idle. All right, that's good. So let's go back up here and let's define a new clip. I'm going to go ahead and select the action clip and just delete it. I'll hit the minus key here. We don't need that. So now we can create a new one with the plus right here. And let's call this one run. And for this one now, it's going to be 2 to 13. There we go. And it as well is a looping animation, so I'll turn these on. We can always hit play here just to test it out, and he looks pretty good there. And then I'll go ahead and click apply. All right, good. Now we've got the run animation clip over here as well as the idle. Let's do the last one, which is the jump. I'll create a new clip, change the name to jump. And this one I have from 101 right here to 105, like that. Now this I'm going to go ahead and leave as a single clip instead of loop time. I'm going to just call this a single clip. I don't want it to loop while he's in the air. I want it to kind of transition into this single 4-frame clip and then transition out as he comes down. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the loop time off. And I'll come over here and click apply. Alright, so now we have our run, jump, and idle animations over here. Good. So that is all inside this character object here. Now to continue setting up our character, let's go ahead and just drag him out into the scene. I'll just click here and drag him into the scene, and there he is. Now I'm going to zero out his transformation over here in the inspector. Just type 0 into the X, Y, and Z position fields. So now he's in the center of the grid. There we go. I think I could also rotate the light here so it's shining on the front of him instead of just on the back, at least for now. So I'll click the light, go to the rotate tool, and just rotate that light around like that. And we can see him a little better. Alright, so now let's get the textures on him. When we dragged him in from Blender, we got all of these materials coming in from Blender as well. We got the character material, we got the eyes, we got the hammer, and this here says checker, but you know what I bet this is? I bet that's the shield. Alright, so now what we can do is we can bring our textures in and assign them to the various slots in our materials. So if I select this character material, you can see we've got a slot here for albedo, or the color. We've got a slot for the normal map, and we've got a slot for the ambient occlusion. So we're going to use these to put our textures in. I'm going to go ahead and come back to the assets window and create a new folder, and I'll call this textures. And I'll open that up, and let's go find our textures here. So there was our scene. Here is our textures. So we've got the ambient occlusion, color, and normal of our character. I'll go ahead and bring those in. And we've got the eyes for the character. We've got the ambient occlusion and the color of the hammer. Oh, and the normal. Bring those in. And we've got the color and the normal for the shield. I'll bring those in. Alright, so we have all of our textures in there. Now what we can do is we can choose our character. We can come over here to the hierarchy and spin the little triangle down, and we can choose the various objects within this character object. So maybe the low poly character first. Here is that shader or material right here. So I'll scroll down, and we can take the color for the character into the albedo. We can take the normal map into the normal map slot, and we always have to click Fix Now to mark it as a normal map. And we take the ambient occlusion into the occlusion slot. There we go. There he is. Doesn't look too bad. Let's bring the eyes in. I'm going to select one of the eyes, open up the material, and let's drag the color into the albedo. Let's select the hammer and do the same thing for this. Color, normal, and occlusion. Oh, let's fix the normal map here. And then the shield. Let's select the shield and take these in. So here it is, shield, color, and normal. There we go. All right, he's good to go now. All right, so the purpose of bringing this character in here in the first place was to be able to control him. So we're going to need a character controller. So I'm going to select this character here and come over here to add component, and the component we want is a character controller. So I'm going to go to physics and select Character Controller. There it is. Now we need to adjust this character controller, this capsule here, so it fits around our character. And to do that, I'm going to go to an orthographic view. I'm going to click the Z axis right here. And then I'm going to click this instead of front perspective. I'm going to switch this to an ISO or orthographic. And now let's just take this capsule, and with the Y axis for the center of the capsule, I'm just going to click and drag on the Y axis and move this up. Maybe something like that. Make sure it's on the ground there. Yeah. And I don't need it quite this wide. Let me try and bring the radius down some. Like so. Yeah. So it maybe encompasses his ears. And let's tumble around and make sure he's okay here. Yeah, that looks like it's pretty good. So now that we have our character controller on our character, we also need an animation controller or an animator controller. And that's going to go right into this slot here. You can see I've got the character selected in the hierarchy, and this slot right here needs an animator controller. That's how we're going to define what animations are playing at any particular time. So to create that, I just need to come down here into the Assets window, right-click, choose Create, and come down here and choose Animator Controller. And there we go. So what I can do is I can call this really anything. I'll call this Player Controller. I'll select that character, and then I'll click and drag this guy right over here into that slot. And there we go. Now what that does for us is if we go over here to the Animator tab, now if you do not have this Animator tab, what you can do is come up here to Window and click on Animator, and that will open up that window for you. And then you can drag it and dock it here in this view if you want. Now you can move around in the Animator by pressing Alt middle mouse button here if you need to move the view around. Now what I can do is open up this character again and scroll down to my animation clips, and let's just drag this idle clip right into the animator. And it automatically, since it's the first one we dragged in, it automatically hooks up to the entry. And therefore, if we go back here and if we turn on our game just by clicking the play button up here, I'm going to switch back to the scene now. You can see that he's going through his idle animation. So just without doing any coding so far, we've been able to get the idle animation looping and running when we turn on our game. All right. So in the next video, what we'll do is we'll add the other clips to the animator, and we'll define a parameter that will allow us to switch from one animation cycle to the other. So I'll see you then.